Chris Williamson is a record holder. He's the first star of Love Island that I've actually been interested in speaking to.
Love Island was kind of like the Champions League final of being a professional party boy.
A former model and nightclub promoter, he's now something of a self-help superstar. Millions watch him for his life hacks and lessons on success. His podcast, Modern Wisdom, is one of the biggest in the world. But does he really have it all figured out? Why is your name associated so much with fapping?
Are you saying I'm pro-fapping or anti-fapping or just a pathological fapper?
I didn't even know what fapping was.
I'm a fapping connoisseur. What can I say?
I mean, that's not going to get clipped and taken out of context, is it?
Maybe you're doing it right now. We might have passed peak woke. Mass shootings, eating meat, hip-hop, smelling of Axe body spray, and saying hello or have a nice day. All terrible examples of toxic masculinity there. Consistency is the only route to success. The thing that you would tell yourself 10 years ago is still the same thing that you need to hear now.
Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson?
Oh, God.
So, Chris is an interesting guy because what he's managed to do really is build this hugely successful career pretty rapidly. And they'll go into it in a second how he did this, because he started off on a thing called Love Island, which is a UK-based reality TV show. And he took that, which lots of people go on. Some of them become minor celebrities for a bit. Usually then they disappear into obscurity and they, maybe they go and do personal appearances at a few regional nightclubs, and that's kind of about it. What Chris Williamson has been able to do, on the other hand, is use that as a springboard in order to become really an international celebrity, certainly on the podcast scene. As I said, Modern Wisdom, his podcast, hugely successful. But it's kind of interesting how he came up, because as he says, this isn't really the normal route for somebody who would have come out of Love Island.
Chris, great to have you on Uncensored. First of all, I mean, on the Love Island thing, I sort of vowed I'd never interview a Love Islander. You are the exception. You've broken free from the mental prison camp, which I put them all in.
Yeah, so as I said, so Love Island, for those people who aren't familiar, is basically it's a reality show where you get a bunch of good-looking, buff people, men and women, together on an island. It's usually like in Spain, somewhere like Mallorca or something like that, and it all gets filmed for a number of weeks. I think it's like 8 weeks or something like that, and people get thrown out depending on the various tasks that they have to do and things that happen. There are penalties, etc., etc., and may the biggest Chad win. Now, Chris was on it some years ago. I think he lasted a few weeks, and then he was, he left the process. But instead of just becoming a B-list celebrity like everybody else does, he actually used it as a springboard for self-reflection, which, again, really, really interesting.
So congratulations on that. When you were in Love Island, you there, I think you were out on the...
And there we go. There he is, getting massaged on Love Island. Amazing.
19th day or something. I think you had a kind of epiphany about your life, didn't you? Explain that.
Yeah, not many people go on reality TV to get catapulted toward a life of meaning and alignment, but I'm an army of one here. Yeah, so I guess I spent most of my 20s acquiring success in the way that modern society maybe tells a young man that he should, with acclaim and status and people knowing who you are and money and parties and all that sort of stuff. And then Love Island was kind of like the pinnacle of that. It's the Champions League final of being a professional party boy, right? And yeah, during that, you have nowhere to go. There's no phones, no TV, no friends, no family, no internet, no distractions, no books, no nothing. It's just you and this scenario. And I was around people like the person I was pretending to be, which...
So that's a really good line he's come up with there. He says it was like the Champions League of the party boy lifestyle. So the Champions League, obviously, if you're familiar with English football, is a division of English football. And he's sort of saying, you reach the pinnacle of whatever this lifestyle that he was emulating was. So decent-looking guy, brought up in the north of England. He'd worked as a club promoter. He was living a fairly sort of... probably very fun, but fairly kind of, you might say, shallow sort of existence, okay, where there wasn't a lot of meaning there beyond. He was probably, doing well with the ladies. He was probably having a good time. He was out partying, etc., etc., but there wasn't anything more to it. And in a sense, Love Island in the UK, you know, that's kind of almost the top tier of that. You know, if you can get on Love Island, you become like a celebrity for a period of time. You're on TV, you get lots of girls sliding into your DMs if you're a dude. The opposite if you're a woman, and it's, you know, he'd reached the pinnacle of that sort of lifestyle, which is the lifestyle to which many people now aspire.
Which was this big name on campus, party boy type thing. And I had a fateful dose of contrast as I lived for 24 hours for whatever, 19 days, plus a week in lockdown that I'd done before, plus all of the post press and stuff after that, and realized I don't think that I'm living in alignment. I don't think the things that I believe are making me happy are truly what I should be doing with my life. And yeah, from there went on a big journey of self-discovery, a lot of introspection and meditation and breath work and morning walks and journaling and all that stuff. And then 750 episodes of Modern Wisdom and a ton of conversations later, here we are.
Yeah, and not just here, but you just did Joe Rogan's podcast, which is the biggest in the world, and your own podcast.
So yeah, I mean, incredible, really. He went through this whole sort of journey of self-discovery that seemed to have piggybacked off the back of going on this incredibly shallow and sort of consumerist kind of show. I mean, once again, I mean, if you're not based in the UK, you might not know Love Island. There are similar shows to this in the United States of America. You know, the kind of thing we're talking about. It's all very like surface level. It's all very like, you know, sort of, it's about being good looking. It's about aesthetically. It's about being a Chad, basically. And obviously this guy, decent looking dude, very good looking. He kind of fitted that archetype. And I think in many ways that he gets a lot of criticism for that, because people think, well, he's good looking, so, you know, there's no further substance about him. And obviously that's not the case, as he went on to prove later in his career. But it's kind of funny in a way that I mean, it wasn't like going to the Himalayas and sitting on top of a mountain and meditating that brought him to this like spiritual journey, quasi-spiritual journey that he's describing. It was actually going on Love Island, which is quite funny.
I think is rocketing up the charts in America, which is, you know, pretty unusual actually for most people in this country, to be a star in that medium in America. So it's really
we're slowly taking that country back over, one podcast episode at a time, and recolonizing it.
I love it. I'm with you. I'm in the trenches with you. But it's been an amazing journey for you. What have you learned about yourself? I mean, you distill all this wisdom to people. But what have you actually learned about yourself?
One of the most interesting insights is that if you, one of the most common questions people ask is something like, what would you tell you 10 years ago? And that is, you know, I wish that I feared less. I wish I cared less about the opinions of others. I wish I did whatever. Almost always, without exception, the thing that you would tell yourself 10 years ago is still the same thing that you need to hear now. I think that we change in many ways, but fundamentally the pathologies and fears and things that hold us back seem to remain uncomfortably stable across time.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And that's a new one on me, really. I never quite thought of it like that, but maybe he's right. The things that we would tell ourselves 10 years ago are probably the same things that we need to tell ourselves today. In a way, that undermines the idea of self-development, doesn't it? Because in a way, doesn't that say, well, then you know, most of us can't change, or we haven't changed, and so we still need to learn the same lessons. In saying that, I think in my own experience, in my own life, there is a tendency to repeat the same mistakes over and over again in a slightly different form. Okay, so it might be, you know, if you have an issue around relationships, it might be, you know, you're getting into problematic relationships. It's not with the same person, but it's with other people who are very similar. Okay, you know, you're getting yourself into those same situations once again. You know, and or it might be, you know, to do with how you handle money. It might be to do with what you do in your career. It might be to do with what you do in terms of your self-confidence. And I think, unfortunately, he's right. And I suppose one lesson here, if we're looking at this from a self-development perspective, I suppose one lesson here is it's a constant journey. Okay, it's a constant journey of self-improvement. It's not just this one and done. Oh, right, okay, now I've sorted my dating life, so I'm good to go. Now I've sorted my financial life, I'm good to go. Now I'm in shape, so I never need to go to the gym again, all right? We need to be working on these things constantly throughout our lives in order to maintain the gains that we've made, okay? Because otherwise, we're just going to keep doing the same stuff and going back to the same place. Please do put your questions into the chat, by the way, and we will get through it as we get on with this.